You can now subscribe and save 20% every single time with a Strava Craft Coffee subscription. That's right. You can subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee and have their delicious CBD-infused coffee sent straight to your door every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks, and you'll get 20% off every single time. What's better is you'll never have to re-enter your credit card info. It's all right there for you. You won't even have to think about it. You'll never have to worry about running out of coffee and that scramble you do in the morning when you've got a meeting and you're out of coffee and you need to be there mentally. It'll just be right there waiting for you whenever you want it from Strava Craft Coffee. So check them out, StravaCraftCoffee.com. And if you just want to try them once before you make the commitment of subscribing, you can, of course, use the code DNVR20 for 20% off. It's Strava Craft Coffee.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
And welcome in to the DNVR Broncos podcast presented by MSU Denver Online. They'll put a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning a degree and living your life. MSU Denver is the Colorado institution providing rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom. MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as any other Colorado institution. So if you're looking to keep that full-time job and earn an education that can hopefully help you get a better full-time job, MSU Denver is the place to go. So check them out, msudenver.edu/online. And when you use the code DNVR Sports, you can have all of your application fees waived. Check out msudenver.edu/online today.
My boys, what's shaking? Guys, is this a Valentine's Day edition, a President's Day edition, just a middle of February edition? What are we rocking with here?
Singles Awareness Day edition.
Well, no one here is single, so we don't really have anything to complain about.
But we have empathy for those who were looking around and seeing all the Valentine stuff. I always kind of put myself back in the shoes of when I was single, and I'd be like, "This is the worst freaking day ever." So I'm still there. I'm not fully in on Valentine's Day. I am fully in on President's Day, though.
Oh, okay.
A big President's Day guy.
Huge President's Day guy. What else? I had something else I wanted to say. I wanted to point out to the people that are listening that if you're watching on Periscope or even Facebook, we really highly recommend you switch over to YouTube. It's a much better streaming product. You'll get a higher resolution. You'll get less buffering. So check out the YouTube side of things. Is just DNVR YouTube for a better product there. Mace is dialed in right now.
Unfortunately, I had unexpected visitors here to my to my studio office here, so it's a little See, there, I've got a dog underneath the desk here. Come on, Ruby.
Man, President's Day at the Mason house is wild.
Well, hi, Ruby.
This is.
There. All right, you guys good?
Can we get Charlotte's take on the Broncos roster?
I think
over or under 12.
Oh, she'd probably say it's not very good. They're not the Bucks right now. Is probably what she'd say.
Yeah, she would be correct. And speaking of the Broncos roster, Mike Clay put out a ranking of basically every position and where each team stands, and then where the teams rank overall in the entire roster. And wow, it is surprising, I think, to many, and I'll see if it's surprising to you guys, where the Broncos rank. Zach, do you want to take us through, this ranking a little bit?
Yeah, so he goes down and breaks down every single position, giving him a grade of 0 to 4, 0 being the worst, 4 being the best. And then he goes through and compiles all of that to show exactly where the team stands in terms of the NFL in offense, defense, and overall. And guys, we've touched on that the Broncos are 12th. They have the 12th best overall team in the NFL. Where do you think they rank in terms of defense and in terms of offense? 1 to 32, 1 being the best, 32 being the worst.
Well, you'd expect the defense to be very high and the offense to be on the lower side.
Well, you're right on that. You really took a swing there, and you did connect. You got a single there. But guys, he has the Broncos defense as the second best defense in the NFL, the second best. And also an important thing to point out here is he does not include unrestricted free agents in this group right here. So this means he is not including Justin Simmons on this Broncos defense. He is not including Shelby Harris on this Broncos defense, and still the second best group in the NFL. Ryan, you kind of have a confused look on your face, and that's kind of how I felt the first time that Mace presented this to me.
Yeah, well, those are the two best players on the defense.
Well, what's interesting, I think, first of all, in these rankings, they're bringing the injured players back in. And right. I think it's interesting to kind of look at how this parses out in terms of positional ranking. On the defensive interior, they rank 9th. No Shelby Harris, but still, it's interesting to say that they're looking at everyone that's left. Presumably that includes Jarrell Casey.
Right.
And that may bolster that defensive interior ranking. Edge rusher, 4th. Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Malik Reed for depth. The one that shocked me, guys, was linebacker. Because you're talking about inside linebackers here at a 3-4 alignment. 4th at inside linebacker.
Whoa.
That's the one that they got a 3.6 ranking at inside linebacker, 4th best in the league. And that was the same ranking they had for edge rushers. So Mike Clay believes the Broncos linebackers are as good as their edge rushers. And honestly, guys, I saw that. I thought, was that a typo? Did he just have a accident here, putting 3.6 in for the linebacker because he had that for the edge rushers? And then cornerback 11. Again, I thought it was a little bit too high. Safety 21, but that's assuming that Justin Simmons isn't on the roster, and so projecting Trey Marshall as a starter. But the linebacker guys, 4th best inside linebackers. That's the one I'm still having my trouble getting my arms around here.
Mike Clay, huge Justin Sternad guy.
I guess. Yeah, Mace, you said they're bringing the injured guys back. Is Al Wilson included in this group now? Because then maybe, him and AJ Alexander Johnson, maybe we're talking about the 4th best group there. But I feel like Vic Fangio took over this ranking for Mike Clay because we know how high he is on Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell. But we've touched on inside linebacker. Will the Broncos add one in free agency? Will the Broncos add one in the draft? We touched on that a couple of times these past few weeks. If that's true, if they have the 4th best group, they're not going to add a linebacker at all.
I don't know how they could possibly have the 4th best group. They don't have a top 10 linebacker at either of their main inside positions.
You'd say Alexander Johnson, probably borderline top 10, right? He could make the jump there. You could convince yourself.
I'd have to see a list in front of me. Just off the top of my head, I would say no. But maybe once I saw the list, I'd say, wow, the league is pretty underwhelming at the position. So yeah, he could be a top 10 player. I think both of those guys are very middle of the road guys. And that's not an insult to them necessarily. I don't think they're on the bottom end. I think a lot of people over-exaggerate the Broncos' quote-unquote issues at inside linebacker just because they don't have a Devin White. They don't have one of those special players there. But they have two guys who are very competent NFL players at the position. So I would have put them like 15th to 17th in these rankings. 4th really blows my mind. It begs the question of if there was an actual error in complying the list.
Or maybe he gave them Levante David or something, and now we're talking about it.
That would be nice. yeah. I mean that one is a big head scratcher. It really is. I don't know. I don't even know where to take that. I don't know how he got there.
And that's exactly how I feel about this Broncos defense being second best in the NFL without Justin Simmons, without Shelby Harris. That blows my mind, guys. But that also tells me, okay, the Broncos are going to lock at least one of those guys down, right? So then are they truly competing for the best defense in the NFL right now? And if so, guys, then the Broncos are very close to being competing, right? I mean, if they have truly the best defense in the NFL.
Or is this an indictment upon Vic Fangio? Because if they have the second best defensive roster in the National Football League, and that's without two of their best players, that means that, yeah, with them last year, they should have been the best or close to the best in the league, and they just weren't. So the question is the ranking off or is the coach off?
Right. Yeah, I would want to see a Mike Clay defensive coordinator / head coach ranking after this.
Well, you just know he would have Vic Fangio ranked at the top of the list, and so then we would ask ourselves, what's the disconnect? And maybe the disconnect is as simple as the injuries, and there's a very decent chance that the Broncos are taking that approach to this offseason. Is the only thing that held them back last year, especially on that side of the ball, was injuries, and you can make that case, and you can make a convincing case for that. It's not sexy or exciting.
It's not, and it's kind of you're rolling on hope with that, and that's a dangerous path to go down, because what happens if you're hit with more injuries and then it just looks the exact same as last year? Well, then you look silly for just riding on hope. But if it works out, then it looks great.
Well, it's also, I mean, you look at the injuries, and some of it's part and parcel with having an older defense, right? The older roster you have, in general, the more susceptible you are going to be to injuries. So Jarrell Casey, he's on the other side. He's on the other side of 30. Von Miller, he's on the other side of 30. Those were two guys that you lost for a long time. So if you keep this group together, yes, it's got talent, but are you opening the door to having another season that's defined by injuries here? That's part of it. I mean, it's interesting to kind of look at this, and I wish that Mike had the specific rankings of players. Those won't be coming for a little bit. But like, what part of that? For example, what part of that 3.6 ranking is Justin Sternad, or what is it that maybe he thinks Alexander Johnson is an All-Pro? What part of the 3.0 ranking is Jarrell Casey? Because based on his calculations, since he's not a UFA, he's counting toward this. What would Shelby Harris have meant? I mean, it's one of those things that in the micro of this, it leaves more questions than answers. In the macro, even presumably if you do bring back Shelby Harris and you do bring back Justin Simmons and you add a corner, you would look at this defense, even if it lost Von Miller, and say, all right, this should be a better defense. It would be on Vic Fangio to get them better. And then it also makes you wonder, what kind of quarterback are you bringing in to complement that defense if it's not a trade for Deshaun Watson? Are you looking for a QB that simply goes out there and doesn't make mistakes? Or is that the top priority? If that's the case, maybe you're not looking at Mitchell Trubisky, but you're looking at Tyrod Taylor, whose defining characteristic is he doesn't screw it up for everybody else.
Or you're looking at the stash, bring in Gardner Minshew. And guys, this is you touched on his name, Deshaun Watson, guys. To me, this says you trade whatever you need to get Deshaun Watson, because what this says is you don't need those pieces. You don't need those draft picks to continue to build your defense or to supplement the offense, because although he has the offense ranked as the 20th best offense, he's probably not too far off from that. But what you need to add in is the potential there and the young and how that offense should grow to a top 10 offense outside of the quarterback position, just with the pieces that they already have. So this says to me, okay, give up a Draymond Jones and a Bradley Chubb, hurt your defense a little bit, but then you add Shelby Harris to this, you add Justin Simmons, they're not going to fall from 2 to 20. They're still going to be a top 10 defense with that. And then you don't need those draft picks on offense or the defensive side. So boom, there you go. Then what is this team?
Yeah, and First of all, thank you, Mace. I didn't want to be the first one to say Deshaun Watson's name on this podcast. I was trying really hard to not be that one. But just really quick, we've been talking about Deshaun Watson as a top 5 quarterback this whole time. And this ranking calls him the 4th best quarterback. Behind only, of course, Kansas City, who gets the full 4.0, Green Bay, and Seattle. Kansas City.
So he's ahead of Tom Brady.
It is ahead of Tom Brady. Tom Brady is behind just by 0.1. He's down one position below at number 5, but they have Deshaun Watson ranked as the 4th best quarterback. To contrast, the Broncos get a 0.8 in this category, which, Zach, I believe you said is the 6th worst in the NFL. So just by swapping that, by going from a 0.8 to a 3.6 on this ranking, you're probably jumping into the top 6 on this list. And then, of course, you're going to subtract a little bit, but you're going to have a top 10 roster and a top 5 quarterback, top 4 quarterback, according to this ranking. You're ready to go. You should be in the conversation for competing for the Super Bowl if you trust these rankings.
Just take a look at the other positions where they rank. Wide receiver 8, tight end 9, offensive line 14th. So not at the
only
bottom
thing
half.
holding back. Yeah.
And then running back is 18th, but still that is the rest of the offense based on this metric. The Broncos are basically average or better everywhere but quarterback.
And guys, where will this offense be in rankings next year, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? All of those positions with barely putting any additional resources into it should be much better. Those should all continue to take a step up. And boy, if you had a top 5 quarterback there you go. And we've heard so much talk this offseason about how the Broncos need to rebuild the defense. According to Mike Clay, no. Now, are they like the offense where they are set for the next, 5 years in terms of youth? No, they certainly aren't. You're going to have to add to them, but you don't need that top 10 pick this year, and you don't need a first round pick next year. You don't need them. Do you want them? Sure. But if this is the case, guys, they're a quarterback away. A quarterback away from being in the playoffs. If you're talking about, a top 15 quarterback, then this should be a playoff team. A top 5 quarterback, like you said, Ryan, it's not crazy to say they are legit contenders.
And I think the commenter here, Denver Refugee, has a fair point, saying not weighing quarterback higher than other positions makes no sense. And maybe the whole thing should be weighted with quarterback and pass rusher. And you go through positional value and reweight the whole thing. Even then, the Broncos are going to rank high in pass rusher. And if they were to add Deshaun Watson, well, now they rank really high in quarterback. I mean, they're only higher. Now, again, in the current rankings, they would be lower. But that's kind of the point that we're making here is, according to Mike Clay, and this falls, it's not just him. This falls in line with what we've been saying most of the offseason. And why I push back on the idea of, well, if you trade all those first-round picks, how are you going to build a roster around Deshaun Watson? Now you're just the Texans. It's like, no. The roster is already ready to go. Now, keeping it together, that's a different story. You're going to have more trouble doing that. And obviously, draft picks and hitting on high draft picks is a really easy way to plug holes in a roster if you do it right. But the Broncos are not the Texans. And even if they were to trade Bradley Chubb and Draymond Jones or some other combination of players, they're still not the Texans. And Deshaun Watson is not throwing to Chad Hansen on 3rd and 7. So this roster, I agree with Mike Clay in the overarching sentiment that this roster is ready to go at all positions but one. And Drew Lock can become that guy. I still believe that. But if you can take a shortcut, and I don't care that they titled that little film they did on George Payton, "No Shortcuts." Take this one. Trust me on this one. You want to take this shortcut. It's like the one on the beach in Mario Kart that takes you from last place to first place.
And Peyton Manning was a shortcut.
Right.
Sure.
That's all you have to say. Peyton Manning was a shortcut. And now you didn't have to sacrifice any draft capital or player capital to get him. It was just a financial move. But still, I mean, what is the harm in taking a shortcut? What is the harm in saying that literally this type of quarterback at that age has never been available on the market? And he's not available yet, but at some point you figure this standoff is going to force their hand if Deshaun Watson is in long enough. And look, the team that had Deshaun Watson, the Texans, just went 4-12 with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. So that tells you how bad their roster is. There have been some reports out of Houston saying that there's a general belief that roster is 3 years away. So so the thought is if they're 3 years away, they're wasting prime years of Deshaun Watson just kind of messing around, trying to rebuild here, which in of itself adds value to the notion that you would move him for a combination of picks and picks and players. The Broncos, so Texans 4-12 with Watson. The Broncos 5-11 with a quarterback that was bottom 3 to 4 in most metrics, and a lot of injuries on the roster. So assuming that you have just a normal injury year, a league average injury year in terms of games missed and the quality of players that you're missing, you plug Deshaun Watson in there. I'm not saying it's a team that wins the division. That's a team that you should expect to win 10 games minimum.
Yeah.
That's the floor.
And again, you're seeing the comment here. Adding Watson will come at a cost that leaves the Broncos looking like the Texans. It just won't, based on everything we've heard. Now, if the cost is Cortland Sutton, Bradley Chubb, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, Dalton Reisner, Garrett Bowles, well, now we're having that conversation. And guess what? I still say, do the deal. Because now you have your quarterback, and you have, I mean, on the very low end, I'll say you have 8 years to figure it out. On the very low end, you probably have 10 to 12 years to figure it out. And in that case, you probably wouldn't have to trade all the draft picks. Even if you did, I'm still doing the deal. So you got to get this position figured out first and foremost. And because of that, it makes this deal really easy to do. And if we go away from the fairy world where the Broncos have to give up everything they have and back to the place where they just are giving up picks, we circle back to the fact that this roster is ready to go. And especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is why Deshaun Watson has the Broncos in the list of the top 2 teams that were named in concrete in the report we saw late last week about, teams he's intrigued by. Well, the 2 teams that were named in concrete by name are, of course, the 49ers and the Broncos. And that makes sense to me. The 49ers have a better team, but not a better offensive infrastructure, in my opinion, other than the coach who's leading that offense.
That's kind of a big thing. And unfortunately, that's where if Deshaun is nixing a trade to any place he doesn't want to go, that's the one that if it came down to the 49ers and the Broncos would concern me, because with all respect to Pat Shurmur and the other coaches in that building, there is no mind like Kyle Shanahan with the Broncos. And you can't blame Deshaun for looking at Kyle Shanahan or Kyle for looking at Deshaun, the two of them kind of thinking, what kind of magic could we make together?
Well, absolutely. But here's what George Payton would say, talking to him to convince him to come to Denver. He would say, look, we got Pat Shurmur, an experienced guy. We really hope it works out. If it doesn't work out, your contract, you're going to be here longer than Pat Shurmur. And you know what? He may have to say this. He may say, you will be in the conversation of who we hire next if we have to go a different route. And that would probably go a long way with Deshaun, because of what we've seen with Deshaun wanting some input on the Texans head coach. But guys, there's another name out here, and I want to get your opinion on this. And the Nagalator, who I love, by the way, comes in and says, we don't have to trade any assets for Dak Prescott. Pay him and keep drafting. And so that kind of brings in the notion of, okay, well, if you bring in Dak, you're going to have to cut some more guys, probably on defense, to free up space. So where is this roster if you bring in Dak, who's not in Mike Clay's rankings because he's a free agent, but you have to cut, let's say, Von Miller and who's one more guy? You just don't sign Justin Simmons. Then right there
Or
you have
Jarrell
over
Casey.
Okay,
Kareem
there you go.
Jackson, Jarrell Casey.
There you go. Jarrell Casey and Kareem Jackson. Guys, then you have $60 million in cap space. That will allow you to pay Dak Prescott $35-40 million a year and then also build out the rest of the roster. Where is this team then?
Drafting a safety.
I
Hello,
mean,
Richie Grant.
based on these rankings, they might actually end up a little bit higher. Now, again, it depends on what you have to give away in the trade. If you're only giving away 2 defensive starters and then you get Deshaun Watson, I think you end up ranked a little bit higher. If you're giving up more players, just based on these current rankings, it's going to be close. Unfortunately, we just don't know in this particular ranking what he thinks of Dak Prescott. I would assume top 10. So again, you're getting a top 10 quarterback to go along with a top 10 rest of the roster. And that's really intriguing. I am sold on Dak Prescott in terms of the money that you would have to give him. I think you're getting your money's worth, even though you're going to have to pay him a ton of money. I think you'd be getting your money's worth. And that's I feel like that's the quiet outlier here. No one knows exactly what the Cowboys are thinking on this. I'm going to keep, speaking into existence, leave Dak, take Mac. I think they want them some Mac Jones in their life. Of course, the nephew of Jerry Jones. That would be so Cowboys. They love them some nepotism in that organization. So it would make a lot of sense to me.
That would be. And guys, the Cowboys could do that, and they could get a number of quarterbacks in the first round with where they are. So this could be something where they say, okay, we don't want to pay Dak $40 million. Although they'd be crazy for doing that, seeing where their season went without Dak last year. And guys, I've been kind of borderline on Dak. No, not anymore. It's easy. You pay him what? 35? Do you pay him $40 million per season to get him here? Do you pay him 4 years, $160 million, fully guaranteed? Now, of course, the question of escrow, which Drink comes into play, as Mace would point out. But from a pure football perspective, you do it.
Well, the only thing, and this has been part of the Cowboys' kind of hesitation with Dak Prescott over the years, is you're paying that kind of money, but that is elite quarterback money. And is Dak Prescott in that kind of elite group at the top, or is he in that next tier? Like if you go by like Mike Clay's rankings, for example, last year heading into the season, the Cowboys quarterback position, hence Dak Prescott, was 7th. So that would put him kind of right on the border of being in that kind of elite 6 and that next tier. If you did pay that kind of money for Dak Prescott, even though he's coming off injury, you would need him to take one more step, because you want him to join the class of Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and probably Josh Allen is right there as kind of that 6th quarterback. And then the next guys are kind of right on their heels, kind of guys like Lamar Jackson and even Dak Prescott. Can he make that tier, that little jump to go up one tier? Because he's really close to that. The problem is he's coming off a fairly horrific injury, and it may hinder whether he could make that jump this year. It might be something you have to wait on.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Mace. You don't pay non-elite players elite money, but it's not like Dak is sitting there as the 12th best quarterback. No. You're right. I think he's probably borderline, so he has the opportunity to be there. And it's not a crazy jump to say that, he's going from 15 to 5. No, from going from 7 to 5, that is realistic. So the question to you guys is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have Dak at $40 million a year in free agency, you give up nothing? Or would you rather have Deshaun Watson with that $10 million cap hit this year? And obviously that's going to increase in the coming years, but not have 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds, Bradley Chubb and Draymond Jones?
If you give me an opportunity to have a better quarterback, I'm just taking the better quarterback. He's 25 years old, guys. And I don't know why they were on a Deshaun Watson kick this week, but PFF was just like, putting out ranking after ranking this weekend in which Deshaun Watson just ranked like number one, whether it was in the red zone or under pressure. He's so good. Like we've talked about how good he is, and I still don't even know if we've really captured how good he is, because I still see pushback from people, and I'm just like, I don't think you people understand how good Deshaun Watson is. So to me, 25-year-old quarterback who is already top 5 in the league is like, it's the best thing that could ever happen to the Broncos. So while Dak is a nice plan B, in my opinion, you're giving me the opportunity. Do you want the better quarterback or the slightly worse quarterback? I'm taking the better quarterback every time. I'll figure out the rest later.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Ryan. And I understand people that would say if you can have a quarterback and you don't have to give up a bunch of capital, if you can have the 7th best quarterback and don't have to give up any capital, or the 5th best quarterback and give up a lot, why would you do that? To me, it's because quarterback is just that freaking important. So Ryan, I'm right there with you. Although, and I'm coming to like a lot more, is Dak Prescott being that plan B. That's not a bad plan B at all. And boy, we're a month away from finding out if Dak Prescott is actually going to be available. We haven't talked about him too much, guys. I just don't think that the Cowboys can let him go. But I mean, every day that goes on, it's just getting closer to that being a realistic possibility.
Well, this is like a bird in the hand, worth two in the bush thing, right? I mean, Watson is a better quarterback, and all things being equal, you take the better quarterback. Even both represent a substantial improvement. But if the Deshaun Watson standoff lingers, do you say, all right, let's see how this plays out? Maybe time helps us. Maybe if the Texans dig in and go past the draft, go through the summer, go into training camp, maybe we have a better chance of pulling this off. But the problem is, that's the two birds in the bush. Dak Prescott, if the Cowboys don't re-sign him, then you've got your guy. There's a certain security that comes with that. You can plan around that. And so, I mean, if you told me that Deshaun Watson was going to be the guy that you'd come out on the other side with him as your quarterback, I'd say, okay, make sure you get Watson. But the timing of it might lead the Broncos and other teams in the Watson sweepstakes potentially to say, we can get Dak Prescott right now. The Cowboys let him go. Let's just do it. Let's just solve the problem and hope that he can take that step to go from top of the second tier to that true elite class there at the top of the league.
And we have had a slight shift. By the way, Mace, I totally understand your position there, and I like that we're slightly different on those. There has been another slight shift in the odds at DraftKings Sportsbook for the Denver Broncos to land Deshaun Watson. Of course, the massive shift when that report came out. Why am I blanking on who had the report? Was it Pelissero? Who had the report about Deshaun being on the list for the Broncos?
I'm blanking too.
Okay, well, sorry to that person.
Jeremy Fowler. Jeremy Fowler.
Yes.
There it is. Jeremy Fowler shifted the odds from plus 1,200 for the Broncos all the way up to plus 500. That moved the Broncos into 4th place at the end of last week, behind the Texans, 49ers, and Panthers. Well, now they have moved into 3rd place, not because of their own shift up, but because of the Panthers' shift down. So what you have now is the Houston Texans at plus 300, the San Francisco 49ers at plus 400, and then the Panthers and the Broncos right there, tied at plus 500. This is telling you that if he's not going to be a Texan, the Broncos are tied for the second best odds to get him in just 10%. I guess it would be 20% behind the leading San Francisco 49ers. That is significant, guys. And, a lot of people for a long time were calling this a pipe dream, including myself. I think it has moved up a level. Whatever is one level above a pipe dream, I think we're in that category now. 5-1 odds. That's 20% chance. That is more than a pipe dream.
Yeah, that is huge. The Broncos are players now, guys. The Broncos are in the legitimate conversation because when I look at the Panthers, I think legitimate players for him. When I think of the 49ers, I think legitimate players, and the Broncos are right there. So legitimate players, and I would not put the Texans as the favorite either. I would put them actually behind the Broncos, which is crazy to say. So personally, I think the Broncos, when you look at those odds, are in the top 3 in order to have Dak Prescott. And the question is, will the Broncos take themselves out of the running? Because I think that they will have the opportunity to take themselves out of the running before the Texans take them out of the running. And the reason for that is, what if they say, shoot, we don't know how long we're going to have to wait to have an opportunity to get Deshaun Watson. Dak Prescott is available right now. We're going to go sign him. Then obviously something like that, you take yourself out of the Deshaun Watson. If you grab a quarterback in the first round and you go all in on him, probably taking yourself out of the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. But that's what George Payton can do. He can sit back and say, I told myself this was going to be kind of a see it all play out year. Let me just continue to see it out, and I will wait and hold out to see if Deshaun Watson becomes available. If not, if the Texans do this or if someone else gets him before we're able to, then we'll go quarterback in 2022 if Drew doesn't pan out.
And this is why I think the Texans would be insane to let this standoff linger if it is apparent that Deshaun Watson has no desire to be a Texan, as is the case, because the longer it goes, the more you have teams that kind of say, okay, we're going in another direction, we're moving on. Trading for Deshaun Watson isn't in our plans. You narrow the field of teams, and thus when you narrow that field of teams competing for him, you probably get a lesser offer. You can't give them a chance to kind of bid against each other on that. And so, I mean, to me, the smart thing to do for the Texans, if you can just accept that Deshaun Watson wants no part of the Nick Caserio, Cal McNair, Jack Easterby triumvirate in that running that organization right now, then just go ahead and make the deal, because they're going to get more than they might get later, simply because right now you've got a bunch of teams. But the Jets draft a quarterback, the Dolphins solidify, renew their vows to Tua and go in his direction. The Broncos get a quarterback. Even the 49ers may look to add a young quarterback in the draft, and they may feel good about their long-term situation. When all these things happen, all of a sudden the market for Deshaun Watson constricts. The Panthers could draft a quarterback there. They could draft Trey Lance at number 8 and say, okay, we're out of the Watson sweepstakes. It's going to be a handoff from Bridgewater to Lance long term. So that's why the Texans need to get over this stubbornness, I think, and accept that Deshaun Watson doesn't want to be there and make a deal right now.
So this is why I am making my prediction here, and we'll end the live portion here shortly after this. My prediction is that the next big shift to these odds on DraftKings Sportsbook will come when Deshaun Watson makes a statement. Because to this point, we've only heard from Deshaun Watson's camp. And that has left there a little door open for the Texans in the sense of, maybe Caserio's got his ear behind the scenes, or maybe Cal McNair can convince him that things are going to be different now. And Deshaun Watson's agent should be telling him, Mace, exactly what you just said, which is that our best chance of getting out of here is getting out of here soon. We don't want the market to thin for us. So my prediction is that sometime before free agency, you're going to see a statement come out from Deshaun Watson. It doesn't have to be, like a written statement, but a quote, something where he says, I will not play another snap for the Houston Texans. Thank you for, the city of Houston, everything you've done for me. I love you, but it's time for me to take my next step. When that happens, floodgates, and Houston will drop out of the top spot of these odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, in my opinion.
Yeah, just like they should. And guys, he should do it J.J. Watt style. J.J. Watt went on Twitter, and I think one of the first words he said was, after he was released by the Texans, was, I wanted you guys to hear this straight from me, not through the media, not in a press conference, straight from me. That's what Deshaun Watson should do. He should take a page out of J.J. Watt and just speak to the fans, the Texans fans, and everyone just directly, and that will then force the Texans to do something. And they could sit back and say, we're going to fine you and we're going to look bad. But when they do that, his value is only the market's only going to get smaller, which will not help his value. So Ryan, I agree. Now the question is, does he do it before free agency? I agree with you. He should. Does he do it when he's starting to miss off-season workouts? Those may not even be happening this year. So then does that push it all the way until training camp, when maybe the first time that players are supposed to mandatorily show up for something? Does he wait all the way till then? There's a lot of times that this could happen.
Yeah. And again, I just think his agent will be telling him, hey, the sooner you do this, the better. So let's come up with a way to address Houston, make it, peaceful on your part, and just say like, I can't play for this organization anymore.
But Houston has to be willing to be peaceful and be smart about it. Unfortunately, the Texans have shown their many things, and smart is not among them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can be stubborn as long as they want.
Yeah.
It only hurts them. But they can do that if that's a road that they want to travel. And you're right, Mace. You can't put anything by them because they seem very dumb and very stubborn.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. A great conversation this morning, boys. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love if you hit us with a thumbs up. We'd love if you hit us with a subscribe, and you can even, of course, sign up for alerts for whenever we go live. So check us out there. Appreciate everyone for tuning in to the live side of things. We're going to move over to the podcast side of things. Download us anywhere you listen to podcasts for the second half of the show.